talk a little Georgia recruiting. Is the Dogs, yeah, they might be moving a little slow in the portal, but it doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you finish. And there's some massive names on the board at positions of need. So I got Jake Rowe from Dawgs HQ on to break down what Georgia's doing right now in the portal. But before we get going, Dog fans, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. All right, let's bring on my guy, Jake Rowe from Dawgs HQ. So, Jake, two major positions in need I want to talk about in this video: quarterback, running back. We'll start at quarterback. What's the buzz right now with the transfer portal?
I don't think that Georgia is like necessarily looking for a starter per se. I mean, I think they would love somebody to come in and put some heat on a potential starter on Gunnar Stockton coming in next year. I think they feel good about Gunnar. But what you run into in this situation is, all right, you got to look at right now. Right now, Ryan Puglisi and Jaden Rashada, for various reasons, and none negative in terms of either of these guys as when you start talking about the buzz as talents or as fits. I mean, both of these guys are very well liked and they love the skill set, but they know right now they're not ready. So Can you assume they're going to be ready after a spring, after a preseason camp? I don't think you can. And so you try and go out there and you create as much competition as you can. And that's kind of a long-winded way of saying they're looking for a guy with some experience or some years. And that's why you've seen Deshaun Purdy from Charlotte, a guy that played a lot of football this past year, but kind of struggled on a bad football team. They've had him in for a visit. They've had Dylan Lonergan in for a visit as well. And Dylan Lonergan kind of fits the years part of that. He's headed into his third season of college ball, and he's a Georgia native. And so it's one of those things like, yeah, if it works out, that's great. But you're not going out there looking for your typical, hey, let's go spend starter money because that's what you need to do. I think there's a lot of confidence in Gunnar Stockton, but they want somebody to both compete with him and somebody who can maybe a little bit of a rising tide lifts all boats as far as that backup job, and to really create a three-headed monster for that number 2 spot. Because as we're learning right now, that one snap that you're always away from playing as the backup quarterback, it can happen first play of the season, or it can happen the last play of the first half in the SEC championship game. And Georgia knows that, and they're trying to get somebody else into that room that may be a little bit more ready.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to another position that we know the Dogs are recruiting hard, and that's wide receiver. They're looking for an explosive wide receiver or 2 or 3 or however many they can get. Who are some of the big names Georgia fans should be following in the portal right now?
I would say the number 1 target is Dane Key out of Kentucky. And I don't care, and this is for talking to folks in Georgia's building, and this is my own personal research. I don't care who you talk to. The feedback has been tremendous about him as a character guy, as a football player. Obviously Georgia knows, Brock Vandagriff real well. Brock Vandagriff was his quarterback this past year. It didn't pan out very well for everybody else but Dane Key. He was kind of that bright spot for that offense. Had a huge game in that upset over Ole Miss. And, so I think that there are a lot of different ties here. Georgia's had a chance to see him for 3 different seasons. They're really high on guys that they get a chance to watch themselves and play against and study on film. So I think that would probably be target number 1. I don't know for a fact that Georgia will look to take more than 1 wide receiver right now. Okay. I mean, I think it's possible. It may even be a little bit likely, but I don't think it's set in stone depending on what they can do otherwise. So, but I think he would be target number 1. C.J. Daniels is a guy who's been on the list for a while. J. Michael Sturdivant as well at UCLA. He's a guy that I think could be on campus at Georgia later on this week. But that Dane Key visit is one that I think is really shaping up to kind of be the visit for Georgia early on in this portal process.
So what other positions outside of wide receiver and quarterback do you think that Georgia is going to want to address during this portal window?
Safety, I think, is a big one. Zechariah Poyser, the kid out of Jacksonville State, became a really hot commodity really quick. I think sometimes you see a guy and you've got him evaluated. He goes into the portal. You think, oh, let's act quick. And then everybody else has been thinking the same thing. And that kind of happened there. He's a Florida native, and I think he's probably going to end up playing somewhere in the state of Florida. But they definitely want to add a safety. I think that was the number 1 guy, the first guy they looked at. And there's still a long way to go. I think they'd love to add a corner, but I think they're more That one is very much driven by who's available. I think their threshold for what they're looking for at corner may be a little higher than it would be at safety. They really need a safety. They would love to add a really good corner. Ethan O'Connor out of Washington State's a guy that I think that they like a lot, and they had him on campus this past weekend. They like Bryce Pollock too, but he kind of sawed it off and committed to Texas Tech there pretty quick. And then defensive line, but again, they don't really have a need for warm bodies there. They need a guy that can come in, maybe plug and play. Heard a little bit of buzz there about maybe them trying to get involved with Travis Shaw. Haven't heard much since. So I know they're going to continue to evaluate the transfer portal in terms of big defensive linemen and look for that zero tech and a guy that can, just play inside the guards there.
All right, Georgia fans, talk to Jake Rowe and I. How you guys feeling about this portal class, and who do you think is the most important target in the transfer portal? Let us know. Comment section below.